I think we'll just start. Okay. Yes.
I'll, he- he's going to comment from there. I'll comment from here. I don't need to be seen.
That'll be her rebuttal.
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember that.
We did that in the Peace Corps, too.
We
Okay,
actually sang
thank you
that
all
in
for
English.
coming. Sorry that things are a little slow today, but we're getting old. Marcus, did you want to say a few words before?
I'd like to just let everybody know we have a three-part presentation. Charles is handing out the agenda the way it's supposed to work today. There are three parts. The first part is called the Peace Corps Punchline. Okay? I hope is this picking up? Okay. Yes. All right, what's the Peace Corps Punchline? This happened 3 or 4 or 5 weeks ago. Ruth and I were on our way to our favorite Indian restaurant. And she turned to me and she said, you know, if everybody in the Peace Corps and everybody in the government had done what they're supposed to do, we never would have gotten together. That's true. What happened first, all right, at the conclusion of our training program,
3 months only.
yeah, June through September, in Maryland, Annapolis, Maryland, we were ready to go to India. And something happened over there in India. The government of China, under Mao Zedong, sent an ultimatum to the government of India. And they said, if you don't withdraw your troops from the northern border of your country, you can expect war.
Yeah, and because there was going to be a potential war, when we got to New York, where they were going to distribute us to all the areas, there were 3 or 4 different groups going, and our group was India 16. Because they sent us to New York, they didn't know what to do with us, because they couldn't send us to India, and we were already on the planes when they just made this decision, so they couldn't send us home. And they just gave us walk-around money for 2 weeks in New York while they figured out what to do with 100 and some volunteers, and the other groups all had about 100 as well. So a lot of people walking around New York having a good time, saw Sound of Music and a few other things, and that's where we really got going.
We learned all about New York, some Broadway shows, the Central Park Zoo, and we decided maybe it's a good idea for us to get to know each other a little better. So, the second thing that happened, of course, was that Dean Rusk took a personal interest in our project. He is the Secretary of State, by the way, at that point. And he's the one who made the decision, you can't go to India now.
Right,
And
and so instead, I'm going to just speed this up a little because you'll fall asleep otherwise. Instead, they sent us to Israel, and they gave us a full tour of Israel for a whole week by bus. That's what clinched this thing. And you know how it is on a bus. And we got to see all the wonderful sights of Israel. And then they split up our 100 people group and sent us to the kibbutzim to work. So we were like hired migrant laborers. We worked from 5:30 in the morning till like 8 at night, and a couple of breaks in between. And that's where I had to give up milk. I always drink milk, and had to take up drinking tea with milk and sugar in it, I guess. At any rate, the kibbutzim, we all did different jobs, and I know he has some things to say about that.
Yes, this is the preliminary part of our transportation from New York to get to Israel. As it happened, they could only take the first 70 volunteers on Royal Dutch KLM. And so those of us at the end of the alphabet had to fly separately. Ruth got to go, the Stenonic clan and the Van Hallas were included in that last section. So our plane arrived in Rome for, wait, you were in the first part, that's right, and I was in the second part. All right, so they went to Germany first and then to Tel Aviv. I went to Rome first and then to Tel Aviv. My problem was, when we deplaned in Rome, I walked around the gift counter and a young man next to me was buying a postcard of Israel. And I said, what a coincidence, I'm on my way to Israel. Are you sending that to Israel? I'd be happy to deliver it for you. Save postage. Well, we got into conversation and we just had a great time. And so I said, well, see you later. I'll visit you in Israel when we're down there. And as I turned, I saw my plane taking off.
Yep,
This
he
is my
didn't show
plane.
up.
So I talked to the stewardess, said, can we turn that plane around? No. What should I do? She said, I think you should plan on staying here for 24 hours because the next plane to Tel Aviv, it leaves tomorrow. Okay. Then I thought maybe I better send a telegram to Washington to let them know where I am in case they're looking. And
Nobody missed him except me.
so we got on a bus from the airport to downtown Rome. Let me preface this by saying this is a story I have never, ever told anyone.
True or not?
Got on the bus for about 40 people. And we drove from the airport, and it took a little over half an hour to get into Rome. I did a head count, and I decided the average age on that bus was 65 years old, except for two people, myself and a young lady just up in front of me. She was dressed in yellow, and
Heat
she
it up.
kind of looked like Sophia Loren's daughter. If Sophia Loren had wanted to do a film about her life story, she would have to hire this young lady to be Sophia Loren as a 19-year-old. Okay, so we struck up she was conversing with her seatmate, and I turned to my seatmate and I said, how are you and where are you from? He said, well, my name is Aino and I'm from Finland. I said, what a coincidence. All my grandparents came from Finland, and I have an uncle whose name is Aino. I feel like your family. And he said, well, it's great to meet you. How you doing? And we had a great time talking all the way into Rome. So we got into Rome, and it's bustling, and we're going up to the counter and asking for accommodations for one night. And the young lady behind the counter said, we're sorry to inform you, but we're having a convention in town. We cannot give out any single rooms. You'll have to find someone to share a room with tonight. And a voice right next to me said, and that's my problem exactly. And I turned and looked at Sophia Loren.
Now he tells me.
I had 1 second to form my reply. And I'm thinking, what is going And that is the point where God's hand interrupted my thoughts. It was anal. Bam, he said. Hey, Mark, let's go. We've got a room for you. We're sharing a room together and you'll be fine. Come on.
Well, the devil made him do it.
The one thing I got to say was, apparently I cannot help you with your problem. That was the last I ever saw Sophia Loren.
Okay, moving on. Go.
Yeah. And that is precisely why, when I landed in Tel Aviv, the person I looked up first was Miss Ruth.
We were doing the Hora, believe it or not. Peace Corps volunteers were. This was before we did our bus tour, so we were at a special place where they sent us.
It was a youth hostel.
Youth hostel.
Yes.
All right, and they were all having a lot of fun. But anyway, let's move on. 'Cause
Okay. So, the third thing that happened was, on my birthday, September 27th, we were assigned to go to a kibbutz. Everybody got a different kibbutz. There were 4 choices. And Ruth came over and she looked at me and she said, "Don't you think we should be on the same kibbutz?" And I said, "Let's ask." So a little negotiating happened and we got assigned to the same kibbutz.
You know, and if we hadn't had that, when we finally got to India, we were like 3,000 or 4,000 miles apart where we were assigned. So it was actually New York and Israel where we really got going.
And on October 10th is Ruth's birthday. My roommate woke me up on a Friday morning and he said, "You told me Ruth's birthday is today. What are you going to do for it?" And I said, "I need you to do one thing. Talk to everybody and tell them after dinner tonight we're meeting at Ruth's cabin and we're going to sing songs and wish her a happy birthday." He said, "And what are you going to do?" I said, "I'll supply the cake, the ice cream, and the beverages." Okay? Sounds good. That's a plan. So on the way, we were all on the same hay wagon at 5 o'clock that night, and we were singing songs from West Side Story. And we got to the end of Officer Krupke, and Lex called me over here. He said, "Hey, Mark, you going to take care of that thing?" And I said, "Yeah." And I jumped off the hay wagon, and I started running in a straight line, thinking, where am I going? I'm in a foreign country. I've got foreign currency. I don't speak the language. Better keep going in a straight line. And I got to the edge of the property. There's a fence. I climbed the fence, and I walked out to the road, and across the street, there was a grocery store. I looked in there, and there was a birthday cake in the window. And I walked in, and in my broken English, I said, "I want that." The young lady who did not speak English brought it up and said in Hebrew, "Anything else?" And I said, "Let's look." And we looked in the cooler, and there was ice cream, and there were beverages. I got 2 liters, a half-gallon of ice cream. We got paper plates, we got cutlery, we got napkins. Put it all on the counter, and she said, "Is that all?"
I don't know where he got the money because we had no currency.
So here's the thing. I reached in my pocket, I pulled out some money, I gave it to her. She looked at it, and she counted it out, put it in the till, and gave me change.
And I think it must have been American money. That's why she was happy.
And so she put it all in a bag. I picked it up, walked out, and put out my thumb. The first car that came along picked me up. He said in Hebrew, "Where to?" And I said in English, "Ramat Yohanan." That's the kibbutz. And so he drove me up to the kibbutz dining room. I got out, walked in with my bag, and into the kitchen, put my bag of groceries in the refrigerator and walked out in the dining room just in time to sit down and have dinner with everybody else. That's when I knew I never could have done this on my own.
Everything fell right into place.
And we had a great time. That was Ruth's birthday. We caused for everyone to celebrate together. Your roommate, Valerie, was from Ohio Wesleyan University, and she played the guitar, and we sang folk songs for hours.
Right.
And we finished with me singing The Sweetheart of Sigma Chi, which is useful because on the 31st of October, Halloween night, we had a bonfire to celebrate the fact that we were going to India the next day. And that's
40
when
days, 40 nights.
Yes, 40 days, 40 nights. And I gave Ruth my Sigma Chi fraternity pin.
And I said, "What's this?"
And I assured her, this is serious business. And I said, as soon as we get to India, I will give you a blue star sapphire ring.
No, you didn't say that. He didn't say that at all, but that's what later on he
That's
thinks.
how I wrote it. So she got her ring when we got to India. Okay.
Anyway, moving on to India. We were in Israel, as I said, 40 days and 40 nights. Then they finally sent us to India, and he was up in northern India, and I was in central India. And if you know India, it's a huge, huge place, subcontinent they call it. At any rate, we were there to teach people how to raise chickens, and we had 3 months of training, raising chicks from babies, and also we had 3 little poultry huts on the Annapolis campus, and then we had
4 huts.
at the very end, we had to prove our mettle, because in those days, this was the first group that had not gone to the jungles to be trained. We were being trained with the great books, and the theological and ideological ideas.
The great books of the Western world is still the main curriculum at St. John's College,
Right.
which
we
is
were
the
being-
oldest college in the country except for Harvard.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we were being trained, the first ones to really try to understand cultural differences, because before that it was just macho stuff, and swinging on vines and dropping into the rivers, which I did at home anyway. But at any rate, when we got there to India, he was in northern India, and as I said, I was in Satara, Maharashtra, in central India.
South of Bombay.
Yeah, south of Pune, and 24 hours from Bombay, which is now Mumbai. At any rate, do you want to continue?
actually-
We need to get going on the.
Yeah. The day of our engagement was actually Christmas, when I went from Udaipur, Rajasthan, to visit her in Satara.
No,
gave
we
her-
had a 3-month training, honey.
Yeah, I'm talking about after we're already stationed.
Right.
And I visited you, and that's when I gave you your ring.
Well,
Okay,
well.
so.
Anyway, another story about that. That we were at the Red Fort, and it was raining, and we got a taxi in New Delhi. It was after every 3 months they had to take us and give us all kinds of shots, and gamma-globulin, whatever it's called, and all kinds of things like that, because this was the 60s. We were there from 1965 to 1968, and a lot of diseases were prevalent. Plus, where he was stationed in Udaipur, they had never had the English there at all, and the women were still in Purdah. It was very, kind of dangerous in some ways. But at any rate, we're going to start the slides, and we'll talk about them as we go. Do you have anything else to add before?
No, I think it's time to start rolling the slides, please. And we'll explain them as we go along, because you now have an understanding that it was important for her to get transferred from Satara to Udaipur. And we are now looking at a picture of the main gate into the city out of the main city palace. And there's a guy on a bicycle there. I think that's me.
Well,
Yeah,
this particular picture doesn't show you very well, but
Okay.
on the other slides we have it, but not on this one.
okay. Well, let's move on. There's a better view of the city palace itself.
This is part of the Purta Palace, the part that has no windows on the, well, on my,
Yeah, yeah, on the left side, you see that whole
Left.
section, no windows. That's because that's where all the,
yeah,
The
the
harem
women
stayed.
were in
and they
Purta.
were not allowed to see or to be seen.
So,
Okay.
keep going.
Okay, next slide.
This-
There's a better view of the city palace from the lake palace.
Right, and just to back up a little bit, I was 1 year in Satara, Maharashtra, and then after we became engaged, we set a wedding date, and his mother talked my mother, my father, and my sister into coming to India for the wedding. And so things were delayed a little bit, but I moved up to to Udaipur, Rajasthan, and when I got there, he was gone, as usual. And I had no place to stay. I'll tell you about that in a little bit.
I
Let's
was
go.
delivering chickens to the auction in New Delhi, which is a long trip. So,
Go.
yeah,
And, that's just a view of the Maharaja's poultry house.
yes, that's the one we helped to get established. And he had a flock of about 200 laying hens in that poultry house. In the foreground? Yes, in the foreground, yes. And we did something we didn't do with anybody else. We actually castrated some male birds, and they turned them into capons. So if you don't know what capons are, they're a delicious chicken, much better than most chicken meat because there is no testosterone in any of the meat. So that's why.
Well, we're gonna get into that a
Yeah,
little bit later. So-
and, yeah,
This is a beautiful lake palace, which at that time was not, it was a hotel, but just locally. But now it's like a 5-star hotel.
yeah.
In Udaipur, even though Rajasthan is a desert, they had 5 man-made lakes in Udaipur. And 2 of them had lake palaces. And this is the one that was really beautiful.
They built the palace before the lake, and then the lake
And this is
followed
a
it.
scene from one of the fountains inside the palace. I'm sorry this doesn't show all the beautiful mosaics that were in this place. But, my mind was somewhere else most of the time, so.
It's a courtyard and a fountain, by the way, squirting water up. By the way, first night of the honeymoon, Lake Palace. Okay.
Right, we did all the things. We rode in a Tonga, we rode on a bicycle built for 2, we rode in a boat, and then we took a plane to Kashmir, but that's later. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, and that's a view of the city from the city palace, overlooking the whole thing. And this is where,
And that's the,
that's
Lux-
where we had, over on the right, you see another hotel that's called the Lakshmi Vilas Palace Hotel. That's where we had our wedding reception.
these are just some scenes around Udaipur.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
And there I am at the Maharana's poultry house, getting ready to do a capon.
Also, the only transportation we had were bicycles.
Yep.
And those bicycles were really nice bicycles, and they didn't have any drives or anything like that. This was just old-fashioned bicycles. But when
One
we
speed.
first started to try to ride, it was pretty hard. But when we were done, we could go up mountains on bikes without any of those extra
This is
gears
true.
or anything like that.
And this was our first, my first address when we first arrived. We didn't select this. Actually, this is residence. We were on the top floor there, and the bottom floor was owned by the landlord. And the Peace Corps volunteers who selected this were both given the right of motorcycles. And they lived here at 24 Panchwati, and as I just found out recently, Jim Nelson, who was a Peace Corps volunteer then, went to work for Arbor Acres Poultry Farms, which is an international conglomerate.
When he returned to
Yeah,
the
when he
United-
returned, and he became the president of that company. So,
This is very unusual housing. I did not have this kind of housing. At any rate, let's move on because time's
Yeah.
going. It's just another picture.
right.
Now,
That's
cows
a-
are very sacred in India, and they were everywhere. But this was the only playground I ever saw. It was just a little park across from where his housing was. And he
Right.
had a roommate, George Fisher, he lived with. Later, they built us a separate, well, they put in a whole separate building called
G-type quarters.
G-type quarters, and that's where we were housed later. So the first day I got to Udaipur, they didn't even know I was coming. And so, and he was gone, and there was no place to stay. But apparently somebody was on vacation, and so at that time, they took me to, this was dark already in the evening, took me to the place and turned on a light, and lo and behold, 5 billion cockroaches scattered all over. I can't remember if I slept that night, but I sure remember those cockroaches. Well,
I'd like to
luckily,
say-
only one night
Yeah,
there.
these are the G-type quarters with our morning alarm clock standing in front. Every morning at dawn, the donkeys would wake us up with a good steady beat. There's George, there's me, and there's
Sonal.
our houseboy. He did all the shopping for us and cleaned up after us, and basically he was worth a fortune, but we
Yes.
paid him the going rate, and that's covered by all Peace Corps volunteers' housing allowance. You're supposed to have a service.
Right, they gave us a housing allowance, and they paid for someone like Sonlaw, who didn't really need much money, they didn't give him much money, I don't think, to just go to the market and shop for us, because we didn't have any time to do that. We were out servicing all the Indian poultry farms, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Okay,
coming up.
great. Let's do the next slide. Here I am cleaning out the very plush toilet because it's actually a water-sealed latrine. Most of the other Peace Corps volunteers had what they call the sweeper system for their latrines.
Well, when I was in Satara, we just had a little outhouse with a basket
There you go.
underneath. And the poor untouchables had to clean that up.
Yeah.
They still have the caste system at that time, even though it was supposed to be
Outlawed.
dissolved.
Yeah, after 1947. Okay, this is, there were only 2 apartment buildings on this little man-made road. This was in the middle of what they call the polo grounds in Udaipur. And we went back to visit back in, was it 2009?
Right.
And those buildings were no longer in existence. They had replaced those buildings with new buildings, and every bit of space all along both sides of that road were covered with new construction, and people were living in it.
You see the ladies there, and workers, they carry the dirt on their head in little baskets, and they get paid for how many baskets they dump. And that roller there is trying to make a road for us, so
That's
it was
steamroller.
easier to get in.
Yeah.
But the water level was only like 3 or 4 feet below ground level.
Yeah, maybe 1 foot. The reason for that is, if you look in the background, you see a green line across. That is the dam for another man-made lake. So all the water below the dam was basically saturated. I think that's why the buildings that they put up did not last, because the water level was right there. When we planted our tomatoes in our backyard, they grew 9 feet tall. They just never lacked for water supply. So they were.
And here are the people. Notice the little children, the little girls, are just about as tall as the ladies. No men there whatsoever. The women did the work. And they carried the dirt and everything, and That roller machine, I suppose, was run by a man, and he
Yep.
did the easy job of rolling back and forth. They probably got something like 25 paisa a day, which is like 10 cents, our money. At any rate, here's another fellow. This fellow came around every now and then, and a lot of the families that were in the G quarters would have him reline the pots. They had brass pots, and he would reline them. I think with the, it was either, what does he reline them with?
Zinc.
Zinc?
Yep.
Just
And
so they wouldn't be
zinc and
poisoned
brass.
by the brass or whatever.
Okay. And there I am on the roof of our apartment building, building a poultry house using mud instead of cement.
Well, and a few other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and yeah, cow dung.
Keep going.
Yeah. There I
There, he had to go
gathering the
collect
cow
it.
dung. Right, and here's a finished poultry house. We had 15 arbor acres browns. Great. We had brown eggs with those, and sometimes we got like 90% production.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of our, in addition to doing the poultry project, we also did the demonstration kitchen garden in our backyard.
Yep.
Actually, it was George's backyard, down
After I
below. He
left.
was below, he had the little house below, or apartment, I should say, below us. And those are the bullocks plowing the
plowing.
field.
Here's a poultry project
back-
class that we had, and we entertained them with a barbecue on the roof. And they were, one of those guys is a government employee. I think he might have been the collector.
No, the collector wasn't there.
Okay, well, in another slide. But there is a guy from the animal husbandry project there also. These were all the graduates of our poultry
Training
farmers
class, yeah.
class. And then they were able to buy day-old chicks, and we would help them build their poultry houses, and they could start earning money in 5 months.
When we went there, there was no poultry industry.
Yeah.
Any little chickens they had were wild. They ran around wild. And the people would just collect the eggs and use them for antiseptic on any cuts or bruises, because the water was not safe. When we were there, we had to boil the water, strain it, boil it again, put iodine in it, and we still got sick. We were sick for 3 years, basically. This is one of the actual ceremonies for when the collector would be there,
Yes.
and all the bigwigs would be there to hand out the certificates. And those farmers that finished the class would get 100 free chicks, straight run.
Right.
So
Yeah, straight run means male and female mix, and then one of our poultry farmers was taking all the males and just throwing them out on the street. Wow, you can't do that. That's a problem. So we showed him how to dress them for market, and we sold them for him at the U.S. Embassy in New Delhi.
don't get ahead here.
Okay.
This is just some more scenes with the training classes. There were quite a few.
There we go.
And this fellow had a really beautiful poultry house.
That
This
was
was
brand new.
huge.
Brand new house.
And his little hut he lived in didn't even compare to this. This was like a palace compared to where they actually lived. And of course,
It was
cooked.
right next door.
This one slide was injured or whatever, overheated when it was sent. I always took the pictures and sent them to my father. He didn't get all of the things I took, but this one apparently
This is a poultry fair.
yeah, it was probably overheated or something. At any rate, this is a poultry fair, and at this time, India had a big push for not just poultry raising, but family planning. So keep going, and I'll show. What happened to the slide? There was supposed to be another slide showing at the poultry
This is
fair.
our egg stall in the bazaar, and our chief of hospital, the animal hospital, is cutting the ribbon.
Okay, and hold it for a minute, because I just wanted to say that at the poultry fair, they had lots of displays for family planning. It was a real big push at that time. By the way, the eggs sold for what in India was 1 rupee, which was like $1 for an egg. And people, our big thing was to teach them that it was vegetarian eggs. The eggs did not have any life. The hens do not need any roosters.
Yeah, and
They lay better without anybody bothering them or any birds bothering them. And at any rate, vegetarian eggs, they give eggs every day just like a cow gives milk every day. And this was the idea of vegetarian eggs.
if you pay attention to the news out of India, 6 months ago, Prime Minister Modi led a campaign to put egg sellers in the bazaar out of business. Egg sellers who were Muslim. He did not understand that these eggs were vegetarian eggs. He said, no, these eggs, all eggs contain life, and therefore you're violating our religious Hindu taboos, and therefore these sellers have to go. I mean, he's the prime minister. You'd think he'd be a little smarter, but obviously not.
At any rate, this was the eggs were very, very popular, and more people, even though they were vegetarians, were becoming eggetarians. They would include eggs in their diet, and that was the whole point. A lot of the little, I don't know if we have any slides here that shows the little children, but their hair was red because they had no protein in their diet, and they needed more protein. And they also had terrible holes in their scalp because of lice. Lice was just prevalent everywhere. And the little children suffered greatly from it.
Let's move forward here.
So that was one of the goals. I did pamphlets, and I did compile a whole cookbook at the end, which I should have given to the Udaipur people, but the Peace Corps people took it. I don't think they ever did anything with it.
This is a celebration tea with the ribbon cutting ceremony of our new egg stall in the bazaar. And this is the Siddharji who worked in our Poultry Cooperative Society. The man with the tilted hat is Lieutenant Colonel Ram Singh. He was a veteran of World War II. He fought with the Indian Army in Egypt. And the young man with the white hair next to Siddharji is our cooperative secretary. He was a Brahmin Hindu and very well educated.
The whole poultry cooperative in Udaipur was very supportive of everything we did. And basically, we were the ones that went out to make sure those little baby chicks stayed alive, and we had to give them inoculations, vaccinations, nose drops. There's the alarm. And all that type of thing. Sometimes with the older birds, we had to debeak if they were fighting each other, and sometimes the pecking order would be too severe.
There she is.
And everywhere I went, kids were following me. They thought, what is this weird person?
Yeah.
Okay, go.
And this shop window sign says Kadi Hot. It's the home industries store where they sell homemade items.
Right, Gandhi was the one that started that industry for India so that they would have exports. And the beautiful, I have saris here that I'll show you at the end. The beautiful cloth that they made was just, it's just every time I went to the market or the bazaar, my mouth would hang open and drool. A beautiful cloth.
Oh, by the way, I drooled over the guavas that were for sale there.
Yeah, those guavas were nice. That we survived on guavas and eggs and
oranges.
And masala dosa. That was about it. They have tongas right here. Now, see the tonga, those poor little ponies looked like they were half dead. But when we went back in 2009, there were no tongas anymore. All the people were riding motorcycles or in cars.
Including the ladies.
When we were in Udaipur, I think I saw 1 or 2 cars the whole time, and one of them hit me when I was on a bike.
That's right.
Now,
True.
more on that later.
Okay, here's our first glimpse of an elephant. They were advertising a circus that had come to town, and it got me to thinking, elephants, horses,
Yep, go,
elephants are better.
just another cow by the train station. Tell them about this.
Okay, these are the male cockerels that were being separated out, and in order to get them ready for market, we put them in these baskets, and we sold them live at the poultry auction in New Delhi.
Now, did you ride on the top of that truck?
For a while, yeah, but then I came down when it got really cold.
That's where he was when I came to
Yeah.
town.
Yeah. And
Because he made the trip to New Delhi several times on these big lorries.
Yeah, these lorries rule the road, by the way. If you're in a car, you don't want to mess around with any lorries. Okay, shortly after her arrival in Udaipur, we were living at 24 Panchwadi, and this is we had several of those chairs, cane chairs. And so, I don't know who took that picture. George must have taken that picture. We had this little puppy, his name was Vishnu. It didn't, and our little jungly cat, and
Oh.
two kittens that we brought down from New Delhi after the seminar.
Right. This jungly cat could jump from our balcony on the second floor to the ground easily and climb up as easily too.
Yeah.
And they're on top of our washing machine, which we had made in the bazaar. So instead of sending them to the washer people that would take them to the rocks and beat them on the rocks, our clothing was not made, our Western clothing was not made for that. So we got a little washing machine and did most of our washing on our
Made sure
balcony.
that local handicrafts people were totally responsible so that they could make more for other people who might want something
And
similar.
this is our place where we stored the water after we filtered it and boiled it so many times. And we had no refrigeration at all. We had a little burner stove. Son-in-law cooked sometimes, but usually I cooked something, whatever. We didn't eat a whole lot. This was a trip out to what they call the Deshi population, where the original inhabitants lived, and this was a roadside working group. Each one of those plots that's filled with water now, the ladies dug, and they were paid 25 cents for having dug a plot. I'm not sure if the next slide show. Well,
There we go. These are vultures.
yeah, they were waiting because somebody was butchering a cow, or I don't.
And then they all decided to flap up at once. Make for a nice spectacular show. The man in the red sweater, Dr. James Banks. And he was an expert in guinea worm. He was doing research, and he was working in Durgapur, about 30 miles south of Udaipur. He is also an artist, and he painted this picture of Udaipur's Pichola Lake with a park in the middle, and presented it to us as a wedding present.
Show the,
Okay, everybody's all right.
and that's,
Yeah.
it looks like, exactly like one of our slides.
It does. He's a great artist. So.
This is Mark with a Rajput who came up when we were at this well. We were visiting the well with Dr. Banks, and he was responsible for making the wells so they had a barricade around them. Otherwise, people walked down into the wells, they did their washing, took a bath, and then they used the water for drinking. I mean, there was a lot of sickness. And these are the Rajput's shoes. I just took a picture of those. And some little kids wanted to get some paisa for doing tricks. This is just a scene in one of the marketplaces. Most of the men wore those white Dobie type outfits. And when I was in Satara, this was my roommate, Kay Martin. She's passed away at this point, but she and I were roommates.
She's from Texas.
Yep.
And
Okay, now,
now we're getting into the wedding, okay?
there's a
I-
whole lot more we could tell, and
Yeah.
these slides have a lot more pictures, but we've already talked a long time, so I know you guys are really getting
The
tired of
guy
sitting.
who's wrapping my head in the turban works for the Maharana. And I think this is the cue. We're in part 3 of our agenda. This is organizing for the wedding. So let me take a couple of minutes to explain how this all came about. We were invited to attend the birthday party for the Maharana. Maharana is one step above all other Maharajas. He's the only one who was not conquered by Akbar the Great. His house has been in power since about 1350. Okay? So the Maharana was having a birthday party, and I was invited. Of the 3 of us, I was the only one who could attend. So I had a great time. I rode my bicycle down, and first time I've ever seen so many automobiles all parked in one place. So I walked in, we're having hors d'oeuvres, getting to know people, and finally I suggested, why don't we sing Happy Birthday? There's a whole room full of people, as big as this. And it was full. And someone said, well, what's Happy Birthday? And I said, this is a popular song in America, and I will teach it to you. It's very simple. So we started singing, Happy birthday to you. Everybody's joining. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Maharana Bhopal. Everyone stopped singing. Total silence. Okay, and then I went, wait, what's going on? And someone said, hey, listen, look at the time. We will see you next week for sure, okay? We've got to get going. Within 5 minutes, that room was clear. No one left, except for one person. The Maharana's daughter-in-law. She was an Irish ballerina named Maria, and she came out and she said, you know, it's going to be a few minutes before they can pick me up and take me back to the palace. I said, could you tell me what just happened? And she said, oh, very, very simple. We never say the Maharana's name. I said, oh, I should have known that. Oh, and I'm so sorry, you know, and I apologize. And she said, well, listen, please tell me what you were doing here in Udaipur. I told her all about the Peace Corps and all the poultry classes that we're having. And she said, well, anything special coming up? I said, yes, my fiance and I are planning on getting married on October 16th. And we were wondering if we could rent the Maharana's royal elephant. All we have is like 500 rupees. Would that be too much or too little? She said, let me check this out. Please tell me where you're getting married, where do you want the elephant, and how long do you want it? And where are you going to go? So I explained all that. At the church, they were right out Chaddock Circle. And we would march up to the Lakshmi Vilas Palace Hotel. She said, I'll send you a letter if it's okay. So a week later, she sent a letter. I really got the letter at the hospital. And opened it up and she said, the Maharana's royal elephant will meet you at the designated place in front of the railway training school, and you can have the elephant all day until the reception is over.
Well,
And
anyway.
then she added the coup de grace. No charge. Okay.
I knew nothing about this until like maybe a year or two ago.
So the Maharana sent his royal elephant, had his servant put the turban on me, and we marched from the railway training school, which is in the background there, and it's like a 3/4 of a mile into town through the bazaar. everybody said, "Where is the Maharana's royal elephant going?" And it was bringing me to the church.
Along with about half of the city population.
Yeah. Up until then, the tradition was the groom comes to the wedding on horseback. Naturally. But an elephant? Really?
Move on. Okay, when we did this wedding, we did a Western dress first, and we changed into Indian dress later, which the Maharana and his sister, I think it was.
His daughter-in-law.
No, the one that you did the poultry thing for. Anyway, this is my mother and my father.
They flew over all the way from Ohio.
These are the Peace Corps volunteers that attended, and my sister Mary is in the middle there with the light purple dress next to me. At any rate, the minister was a Scottish minister, and we had a terrible time finding a minister, that would marry us, because
You had to be licensed.
the Indian government had strict regulations on this kind of thing. So, at any rate,
The wedding party here is all Peace Corps volunteers except for Sister Mary.
Yeah.
She was the nurse.
oh, and another thing is, the morning of the wedding, we had to go find flowers, and we had no idea where to find them. We went to the, they had a university poultry farm there, and they had a rose garden. So we went and picked roses, but by the time we rode on our bikes and got back in the heat, the roses looked pretty limp. But afterwards, they gave us these beautiful leis.
Everyone who came to the wedding brought a flower lei. Amazing. So this was immediately after the ceremony. And that's my mother next to Ruth and her mother on the other side. And you see in the background, there's the elephant.
And he's kneeling.
That's
they-
how you get up on top of the elephant.
You had to use a ladder to get up, and this time we had changed into Indian dress. And,
Yeah.
This is not the dress I wore. This is the skirt for it. This is one I had made later, but the one that I was wearing was really heavy because it was loaned to us by one of the Maharana's relatives, and it was solid gold on all of the decorations, and so it was really heavy.
Yeah, solid gold thread.
In your outfit too.
My jacket weighed at least 50 pounds, probably more. There we go. And let's see, there's just a curtain behind us there. Yeah, that's the open door to the lobby of the
Okay.
Lakshmi Vilas Hotel.
We're almost done.
Yeah. And there's George painting Just Wed on the back of the elephant. And there's Dave Wilson from Montana. He took all those pictures from the roof of the church. Isn't that amazing?
Also, when we were riding that elephant, the little fellow in front with his little stick, he had to lift up the electrical wires so we could get through the town, because we rode from the lower levels up to the hills,
Yeah.
and their electrical wires were never very high off the ground to begin with, and I was afraid we were going to get electrocuted before we even got to the reception.
And this was the rest of the wedding party that came from the railway training school.
Right, and the
And
Maharana
there's-
loaned his matched
Yeah,
Pinto stallions there with a beautiful, these are just more slides of the,
I think
Udaipur had a USAID group of workers.
Ohio State professors in agriculture and English and things like that.
Now, here's the elephant, is one of the tallest elephants I've ever seen. At any rate, I was getting ready to throw the bouquet, and I lifted it up, and the elephant grabbed it and ate it. So we didn't get to throw the bouquet. But George threw the, what do you call that?
Garter.
George threw the garter.
Oh, no, he caught the garter.
What, oh, he caught it?
Yes.
Oh, I threw the garter.
Yes, that's right.
Who knows?
Whew.
and of course cutting the cake, and this is before they started the idea of smearing cake all over everybody.
We gently fed each other. Okay, and talk about honeymoons. This was a houseboat in Kashmir where we spent a couple of days.
No, 2 weeks.
Really,
We had never taken a vacation, so we took
yeah,
a,
we had a lot of vacation time. They have lots of houseboats in Kashmir.
right, a lot of canals in Kashmir. You can keep
The
going.
name of the city is Srinagar. And there we are in the houseboat. I don't know who took that picture, but it's a nice
Yeah,
one.
I don't either, but it was very cool up there. It had been quite hot where we were down in Udaipur, but this is Kashmir, Srinagar, and it was very cool. And just another picture around Kashmir. This is a shalwar kameez with a sweater. I had a sweater on and a scarf on. All of our clothing, after we started getting Indian dress, we took to the tailors. The tailors were excellent in India. They made beautiful clothing, and this was common. Because we were riding bicycles all the time, we couldn't do it in a sari. Saris get caught in the wheels. But this outfit is like a dress over leggings, and quite warm and very comfortable too.
So if anybody would like to learn how to wear a sari, we'll be offering free lessons as we depart this place. But for now, we want to thank you for all your attention and for spending so much time with us. We appreciate you being here, and we hope we get a chance to renew our fellowship together,
Well-
viewing each other's experiences in getting married, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, okay?
Well, this is the beautiful Taj Mahal, and there's a whole story we had behind this too, but we're not going to tell it today. I'm sure some of you have already heard it 100 times.
Yes, yes.
But it was one of the most beautiful buildings in India, and of course, I think it's one of the wonders of the world too.
It is. It's the only monument to love ever built. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Just for the end. We'll move it.
Okay.
We'll say goodbye. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Steve.
All right.
Beautiful. Hey, thank you, Steve.
I just want to move yeah, put it down. There you go. Now at least I can get that. One second, let's just move that out. Very picture. That was in my place. All right, here you go, guys. Happy anniversary, 56 years of love. I'm gonna get a picture of your flowers too. Those are here. Stand right there, right where you're at. That's a great picture.
Glad you could be here, Steve.
Me too.
I'm taking just a little bit of video now. So I can get your laughs